I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the work session of the Madison County School Board on Monday, August the 1st, 2022. The first thing we will do is the pledge and the moment of silence. You guys would join us, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now for our moment of silence. Thank you. First thing on our agenda is the approval of our agenda. Could I have a motion that we approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Could I have a second? Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. The first item of business is a request for information and further action if necessary. One of the things that we're going to be doing tonight is, because this is a work session for us, we will have quite a few topics that maybe don't fit into a public agenda at this time. So we will just bring those up and we can discuss them and just make a decision on whether to move forward with something, move them into a committee, or anything else that we think needs further research. So first thing we will do is the floor is open for anyone that would like to ask questions or have a request for information.
The first thing I'd like to mention, or to bring up, is the last meeting that we had. We were about to approve policy, or looking at approving a policy, and I asked to make to strike some wording on one of the priorities, not policy, the priorities. So I'll go back to that agenda and view that real quick. See if I can find it here. You printed it? Oh, good. Thank you, Neil. Yes, so as presented, priority number 2 says ensure every student has access to the resources and educational rigor that they need at the right moment in their education. I think it should be a period right there. We're focusing on students, every student. There is no adjective necessary, just every student in the school. And to simplify that.
Discussion?
You want to go first? I just wanted to add that that priority to what Mr. Sheeds is requesting be eliminated or stricken is already addressed in School Board Policy AC. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew those words in School Board Policy AC. And do you mind if I read it? Do you guys care? School Board Policy AC says, the Madison County School Board is committed to non-discrimination with regard to sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, race, color, national origin, disability, religion, ancestry, age, marital status, pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, military status, genetic information, and any other characteristic protected by law. This commitment prevails in all of its policies and practices concerning staff, student, educational programs and services, and individuals and entities with whom the board does business. So I feel like it's addressed in that non-discrimination policy already. So I just wanted to state that.
And I think when we did the survey, when we asked the survey and asking people for feedback on the feedback on some of the stuff, one of the things that struck me was there were people saying, well, why isn't this category in there? Why isn't this category? And it seems to me, like Mr. Sheeds, I agree with Mr. Sheeds because I just think it's, you may have a never-ending categorization of things, and it's not necessary. It's every student is every student is every student. And so in some ways, I think it's just unhelpful to have that number of categorizations, and we leave somebody out, they feel like they're being left out, we don't add them. So it's much simpler and more effective, I think, and clearer what we're talking about, just to strike out that second half of the sentence and focus on the every student part. That's what I think.
And this is just one little thing, it doesn't have anything to do with really the conversation here, but some of the policies, as I was going through the policy manual, say the blank school board or the school board. Can we make sure it says the Madison County School Board? Yeah, I printed it, so. Can we make sure that just, and it doesn't have to be done like this month, but, because school's starting, but can we just make sure they all say the Madison County School Board? That's just a clerical thing.
So at this particular point, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with them being there, personally. But if they are already in a policy, and that is already covered and guaranteed in our policy, which I think is important, I don't know that they have to be necessarily in these goals, this goal. The goals are written every year, and there's nothing that says that we can't go back at the beginning of the year if we see it's necessary and rewrite that goal. I mean, so that's what we usually do, very first thing for the year. So right now, a decision has to be made, agreement of whether this is going to further study, move forward for a vote. We can't vote tonight. So that's, if it's general consensus that we move it forward, we can't do it now, but we can put it on an agenda. But I'd have to have a consensus between all of us.
I was just going to suggest that, I don't know, Ms. Graham, if you're meeting with the committee that is made up of those priorities before our 8th meeting. No, I didn't figure. To make that a suggestion to this committee, rather than saying,
Yeah,
you're
I-
going to do this.
Yeah, I like that
I would
idea.
rather, this is the school board's suggestion, and this is why it's already addressed in policy AC. Can it be on an agenda for that committee? It's a question.
The committees actually did not change the wording of the priorities, because
Okay.
that came out of your work session from before
True,
the retreat.
that's right. I remember that long
So-
time ago.
Yeah, I was going to say is I think we have the right to make that change to
That's
the
true.
priority. It's our work.
It is our
Versus
work. You're right.
the goals, which is the committee work. So I would say we could make that change. And I guess the question I have is, we're going to vote on this next week, right, the whole thing?
Monday.
But we can change the draft now, right? I mean, so we can, if we decide to strike that, that would be part of the draft, and then the whole thing.
That comes up next
It
week.
comes out, and the whole thing will be voted on next week, right? Is that correct? So we could decide to strike that now into the draft, and the draft gets voted on next week, I think. Just like everything else, and all the other work I assume we're going to go through each priority and talk about each one probably, and as we do it, I think we can create any draft we want to and vote on that next week. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I believe that what we would do is move it forward with a draft.
Right.
That kind of fixes what we had decided to. We decided this in what, January, February? And it was our work to begin with.
Right.
So,
Thank you for reminding me. I'm sorry.
Thing is, I like kind of where Nita was going with that, though, because this is actually a priority that has a group within it. Because when you pass this long-range plan, I always miss one of the words, the Diversity, Opportunity, and Inclusion Task Force is coming out of this particular priority. So it might be good if you left it at the moment, because you can see all the different data points that committee is going to be looking at. And it might be interesting if they were to report back to you, because I think one of the biggest tasks of this priority first is to bring more diversity to the table of this task force. We need to figure out who we're missing and make sure we have the voices and that we're inclusive on this task force. And then look at our practices. Who are we spotlighting and who feels left out? So I think if we could start there, and then maybe they come back to you
Okay.
and say, yeah, we think these words are important the way you had it before, or no, we feel comfortable you saying everyone. Like, it might be more beneficial to have everyone involved, like Nita was saying.
So table it for right now until that can be done?
Well, this priority was from the last board.
No, you all did it.
No, we didn't change, that wording came from the last board. We didn't add all that, we didn't add that at the end. We've been talking about this since February. That was when it was first brought up, and we met over at the primary.
No,
or
you
the
all,
the Waverly.
this was your priority. Yeah.
We did.
Right, right, that's my point. It's not something we came up with, it's carried over from the previous board, and I'd like to get to where we're not, and you take this as offensive or whatever, the Madison County Schools, just like every other school, is a learning institution. And all of these adjectives aren't necessary for these children to learn. We need to focus on just getting these kids, I want Madison County school children to come out of schools and be ahead of everyone else. And when we focus on this little stuff to make people feel better, it doesn't help. We just focus on the basics, focus on the learning, and teach kids. I mean, that's our goal. We want kids leaving this school ready to hit the road and go, or go to college, or however it be. And I think when we add all this extra wording to something that important as ensure every student has access to the resources and educational rigor they need at the right moment in their education. I mean, that is basic to the point of what we need to focus on. And when you add the rest of the sentence in, it's like, well, that stuff doesn't really matter because we want to make sure everybody feels happy. I'm beyond that. We just need to focus on the children and get the schooling done, get the learning done. I like for all this stuff to be struck.
I see where you're coming from. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say it matters to some people.
It does, because I feel like if you look at us as a group, we're not representing everyone in our community by sitting here. In every family, they're the experts on their own experiences and their own lives, where they come from. And we just don't have everybody at the table right now. So I feel like if I'm a student and I'm from a low-income family, like, do I feel like I'm getting the right education? We need that family here telling us that. Like, we need people on that task force saying, you know what, I feel left out. I was too afraid. I didn't have shoes for football, and I was too afraid to ask. Like, we need to know if that stuff is happening. And that's what this means to me. So I think that we're just kind of seeing it different ways.
Well, we might be seeing it different ways.
I would feel more comfortable if it went back to have the committee input, where there are the people at the table that were on that committee, because they took what we wrote originally, and then they kind of put their own ideas to it.
Well, we didn't
Creating
originally
them.
write that. This board did not write that.
We approved
We
it,
brought
though.
it over. Well, we had discussion about striking those words back in February. We talked about it then, and it's been put off and put off and put off, and here we are, I'm asking for it again, and you want to take it back to the committee. And how much longer are we going to talk about it?
I thought we voted on it,
We haven't.
We voted on the
adopted-
draft.
on the draft?
Yeah, we haven't adopted the
Oh,
strategic
okay.
plan yet.
All right.
That's
'Cause
But
I
on-
you
know-
chose your priorities,
We
and that's what that
chose,
is.
we adopted the priorities, but we haven't
Okay.
voted on the strategic plan yet.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean, but we
Monday.
did vote on these words back in January, I think, didn't we? Because I know that,
In March or something, yeah,
was
February,
it
March.
March
something
that
like
it came to a vote? Okay.
For the draft, you had to vote for the draft. It was on there, but this is an opportunity, that's what we're doing right now, I think, is to fine tune the draft. It's our last chance to do that, I think, before the vote. That's why I'd support Mr. Sheed's idea. Ms. Graham, I hear you. I guess it's bigger than just the words, though. I think it's because it's about an idea that we look at every child as a not as a piece of a demographic group, but a child, you know? And I guess that's part of what I'm hoping that the task force will kind of get away from the categorization of things and just focus on how do we help every single child, regardless of anything. You know, I know you know what I'm saying. I know, we're coming from two
exactly.
different, I kind of look, we can look at it from two different angles, I think. I just think, where Ms. Sheeds and I are coming from in this is that every child, every student word is all that really matters. And that task force, I mean, I support that task force existing and continuing good work. But I hope it will be based on not, you know, what sex or race or religion or income level, but on Billy and Mike and Wendy and, you know what I mean?
Well, and
That's why I
we
kind of
set up,
support
like,
Ms.
within the
Keenan's.
goal, all the data that would be reviewed. So, and that's what you're getting at, like, are we really drilling down to see, like, where are our gaps? And are we really helping every child the way we say we are?
I just think that other stuff is unnecessary and gets away from the individual child, which is really what matters, I think. That's why I support. Is that rain? That's why I support getting rid of that phrase.
So if when the draft comes to a vote and we adopt the draft, then can the change be made at that point? Or-
Tonight,
or
I'll
is it
make
the
your
whole-
edits,
excuse me,
and
is it
then
the whole thing?
well, you'll do everything, if you're ready next week, you'll do everything. So I'll make the edits tonight, as you say, to edit this, and then we'll put that out to the public tomorrow, and that'll be the one they know you're voting on next week. So anything tonight you want me to edit live, I'll edit.
And it'll go out to the public tomorrow,
Right, we'll post it on Board Docs.
and they'll have a chance before we vote.
Right,
For
you'll have
public comment.
they'll have public comment before you vote, correct.
So there'll be public comment beforehand?
Yes, because this will be an action item next week.
Okay.
Actually, I have another question, since you brought that up, too. This was brought up by some citizens that talked to me, and I can't remember if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, we had a bunch of people come in and speak, and then we went into the band trip. I'm for the band trip, I'm okay with that, but we went off of this, heartfelt comments from people, and then we went into a band trip and some other stuff, and it was like, it was building, and all of a sudden, it was like the loaf just
Just
flattened
wait.
in the oven, So can we set it up so that we have public comment for that priority? And then after we hear public comment, we vote then on that?
We could do public comment after business information, before action items. That would fit. And then let you do, not let you, that's the word, but to have the long-range plan vote right after public comment.
Just move it.
Just slide it down a little bit, so we have the celebrations.
Yeah, we tried to do that.
It's important to have
when
the
we had two
celebrations,
public
too, and I'm
comments,
not-
So that we
yeah.
had one right before something we voted on, but then people didn't like two public
We could
comments,
do it.
so.
Yeah.
All right, you want to have two public comments?
I want to make this very clear. I am for public comment. I mean, to me, the First Amendment and people being able to say what they want, that is top of the ladder for me. So I want everyone, I would love it if we had way more people coming here to comment, because that's how we gain a lot of our understanding and how the citizenry is, so easier to make decisions and whatnot. The fact of the matter is, it's the most we've had, 30 maybe? We'll say 40, 50 at the most. So if that's that many that come out and they're passionate about saying something, commenting to us, if we make it so that, if you're going to, they can comment multiple times if there's multiple comment sections, but for that particular, say, we're going to get ready to do this vote on this particular thing, and if you have comments regarding that, we ask that you bring those comments forward, but keep it to that so that we can get through to the vote, and then another comment section for whatever another vote may be, or if there's just a random comment section for what other comments they have.
Yeah, the only danger with that, as we saw that at one time, is if you have multiple comment sections, we won't vote until 11:30 at night or
Yeah,
something.
it's
And
gonna run
the
it
trouble with that
down.
is that people then kind of lose out on, last time we had 60 people here, and by the time we voted, like 4 people here. And then they don't hear us say anything, they don't see the vote. So, and it's so hard to keep, it's very difficult to keep people to a topic when they have public comments, right? It's very difficult. What are you going to gavel them down? You can't really gavel the public
No.
down like that. So that's the only trouble with
don't want to,
multiple
anyway.
multiple public comments is that, I think.
And I agree with both of you, but I think that we could do a long-range plan public comment, like, sort of similar to, so not like, not like a not for each priority, but a long-range plan, public comment time, and similar to like the budget comment. You know, like the budget, because we go into a budget, comment for the budget. So I think that we could do that. Like, we could have our regular public comment.
We
For-
actually think you have to have a public hearing before you finally approve the long-range plan. That's what we're looking at.
Okay. Well, there we go. So that might be an opportunity to sort of compromise and instead of having a public comment for each priority, we could have a public comment for the long-range plan.
Yes, yeah,
In
that's.
general, you know.
And that's what I meant. And
Okay.
because I think everybody's kind of on board with the rest of the priorities, that one specific one, because I'm looking to strike that wording, that, I imagine that will bring, people will want to have something to say about that, so.
And then we could, and that public comment could be right before we vote.
Sure.
And the regular public comment could be,
So we're going to put 2 in?
that's what I'm
Is
thinking.
that what
She's looking
everybody-
to see if we have to have a public hearing.
Well, we've already had one, I'm looking at the policy AF. We've already had one public hearing to solicit public comment on the plan, or it says or revisions. So, I mean, we're just going to have another one, which is good, more public comment.
Okay. There we go.
Okay.
The other question, this kind of alludes to, or kind of goes with, I went through all the policies from last month that you gave us. And policy JFB, which is student involvement in decision-making. I'm just curious about adding middle school and/or high school kids' voices. They don't necessarily have to come to every committee meeting, because instruction's important, student life is important, but have their voices heard. If they have anything to say about our long-range plan. Like, so it was up for revision, and I'm fine with the revision. It was just one word. It says, the last sentence says, student input is important in the data collection process, and on relevant issues, students' views are sought out and considered by the superintendent and the school board. So this is a perfect time to seek out student voice in our long-range plan. I just wanted to bring that up. I'm fine with the edit that was put forth, and we'll vote on that next month, but I'm just tying all these policies too.
There were quite a few of them.
That's what happens when I have to work. JFB. And the non-discrimination policy is AC.
So just to confirm, are we good with taking that second half of that sentence out?
Yeah.
Like, with the draft?
I can hardly hear with all this
Sorry,
going on.
I was asking are we good with taking that second half of that sentence out on priority 2? Can you hear me? This is kind of hard to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I was asking if we can take out that second sentence
On that one?
on priority 2.
We're still on priority 2,
Yeah, we are.
Gotcha.
and I think the consensus is to strike it as a draft for the public to see.
Okay.
Is that the consensus?
I think we'll put it on there as if we strike it, and then let's see what the public has to say about it.
agree.
I think that we're missing their voice, too.
Strike all the way up to the word education,
Okay. So I know,
right
you
after
said,
education, beginning it regardless.
You want a period after education? Yes. Yes, Anna.
so right
Miss
now,
Graham, I'm sorry.
right now, are we going with the request for information? And I know Mr. Sheets has a number of them that he was requesting information about. So do we want to go ahead and have his, and then everybody else can take their turn?
Sure, that's fine.
That
I
okay?
I just have policy questions, that's all.
Okay.
I went through all the policies that were up for, that were up for renewal.
Yeah, I did too.
And I have questions and some edits, too, just around policies. But you go first.
Go ahead, Mr. Sheets.
Okay, this should be quick. If I gave Mrs. Graham and Mrs. Jones time enough to gather some stuff. So after the adoption of the HMH curriculum, I had two people definitely asked me, a third was beating around the bush, and their question was, how much does this curriculum cost? And I did not know. And I was embarrassed because that was not a question that I asked during this, and it's something that
A lot else.
I should have known. It's a lot of money. Plus, it also gives us a bar, sort of, to know the next curriculum adoption, is it way higher, lower, how can we price shop, looking for numbers and whatnot. So anyway, that was a question for Mrs. Graham.
Okay. So for grades 6 through 8, and this is the cost per student for their textbook, for their online
Current students,
textbook. Well,
This-
anybody, yeah, we ordered for grades 6 through 8 for next year. So 6 through 8 textbook with hard copy and digital access is $117.05 a student. And then 9th through 12th grade, it's $122.05 per student. like
now
in
that's,
college.
if we use it for 7 years, then that
Right.
it's divided amongst the
There
children
you
for the
go.
next 7
Yeah,
years.
you can look at it that way, too.
The price will go down even more because we know probably our attendance numbers hopefully increase.
Yes.
So, okay.
And
What
then
is-
that's comparable to, let me hold on, there's a price sheet online for, of course, it's when they developed the price sheet a few years ago for English, the literature textbooks. So the prices are old and not necessarily what your division would receive, but it's online. Hold on a second, I'll pull it up for you, for some other companies. I think the rain's making it slow.
While you're looking for that, another question. When you order a curriculum, do you order it for your number of students, or do you say, we're going to have 250 kids at school, possibly next year, so,
We project, I think we did what, like 120 was the average? Or, yeah. Yeah. There's always a buffer.
Okay.
Because sometimes books get lost and get left places.
and one of the reasons I asked that is, so I know the paper, the hardback copies, obviously that's it's a physical piece that you're holding, but for the electronic copies, then there's logins, and does that cover all of them? Does it cover extras?
It is.
Okay.
Whenever we have a student, they'll definitely have a login.
Okay.
For every year. It pays for that.
All right.
And so some ideas for grade 6 through 12, and I'm just randomly give you some prices, I guess from other places. And again, this is what the state put out in 2018. So prices change, and they're not prices for us. But McGraw-Hill, grade 7 reading, $90. Pearson, grade 7 reading, $124. I'll just random. Grade 8, mirrors and windows, $83. Grade 8, Pearson, $124. Grade 8, Perfection, $348. Get a high score too. So they seem, well, the 348 was an outlier, but they seem to be around, around 100,
Okay.
give or take, per student.
The other thing too, Mr. Sheets, just because I looked it up, some of these books that could have been considered are on Amazon, but they're old editions that wouldn't be what we would be getting. And they're like 1 or 2 copies that somebody had, I guess, and just put them on Amazon. So if you have somebody that looked it up on Amazon and said, I see where I could have bought that book for $35, it's usually, well, it's not usually, it's not the same edition that we ordered. It's not an updated edition. Plus, it's one book, too. So I was surprised to see some of them on Amazon.
Students trying to get some of their money back.
Maybe.
I don't blame them.
So you had other,
Okay, so I'm not going to get into the details about this because,
because you can't.
because I can't. But I sort of had a thought, well, there is one individual I probably could mention because he's the one that told me. It's public knowledge, but he decided to leave. and there was video evidence, and good person, rough situation, bad timing, situation just kind of crappy. And had we, due to a previous situation, there was video evidence, and I didn't see it, and absolutely trust Mrs. Graham and Mrs. Jones' opinion when they see the video, what actually happened. But I don't feel like I'm doing my part as drawing a blank. I'm not doing my part as as someone speaking, representative, thank you, sorry. As representative for the people, if I'm not seeing what y'all are seeing and saying, yes, I agree, or I'm not so sure about, thinking it over. So I'd like to request that in the future, that when we do have that,
There's
that we have an opportunity to see those.
There's only one thing to caution. First of all, if it's involves
Could you
staff.
speak up a
If
little
it
bit?
involves staff,
Yeah,
it would always
thank
be closed session, because
Sure,
that's
certainly.
employee confidentiality. And another thing we have to be careful about is if it involves a recommendation coming from the school level, our offices, mine, Kathy, Dr. Jones, sorry. If they've been terminated and then it's getting ready to come before the board, we do have a grievance policy, and you all are the fact-finding panel per law. So if they want to appeal my decision, it eventually may get to you, so you wouldn't be able to see a video until that time. Because
Okay.
you have to be, you have to be the final word, impartial, so
That makes perfect sense.
that would be the only.
I understand. Okay. Next, Mr. Dodson, I hope you can help us on this one. Some of these meetings go really long, and there's people that, they're home getting ready for work the next day. They got kids to put to bed. They can't sit through the whole meeting. So they always ask, where's the video so I can watch the meeting from last night? Where's the video? And it's sometimes, well, if Chuck gets it up pretty quick, they can watch it through there, but sometimes he doesn't get them back up. So do we have, I know I talked to Mr. Pate before, and our storage, something about we didn't have enough storage, and we were losing that opportunity or whatever. So what options do we have to get them recorded and then uploaded online?
Right now, we're working with about a year's worth of storage, so we can kind of get pretty much the last year's worth. So we have,
Okay.
I think, 2 years' worth on there, so that's one of the things we're looking at right now, is getting some of the older ones archived and put away, so that we can then open up storage to be able to put the new ones coming in
Okay.
much quicker. One of the things you got to realize with the stuff, that they pull off miracles with the stuff that we do, with the equipment that we have. The videos that he puts together and all that, it still has to go through the cycle. We still got to upload them. It's just a process. And then for us to get them on the site, it doesn't take a long time to do, but then it's just got to go through, we got to make sure things are ADA compliant. We got to make sure things are just, we try to make sure everything's done well. We review it to make sure it's good for the public to be able to see and all those things. So we're working on that. We should be able to free up more space to be able to get more stuff on there and keep it on for a longer time. It does lead us into other things we're talking about with our Blackboard and with our website that we can talk about it, some of the other questions, I think. But we are looking into that. I mean, we're going to do the best we can with it. We don't want to buy more space, so to speak.
Understood.
Because it's very costly when it comes to that kind of stuff. So we're trying to maximize what we have and get that part taken care of.
Yeah, thank you. I've Mr. Pate, what's the other guy that helps him?
Taylor Davis.
Taylor Davis, those two guys. Of course, I've called Mr. Pate and emailed him and texted him, and I mean, he's like, hey, Johnny on the spot, man,
Oh,
getting
yeah.
stuff done and helping me out. So I really appreciate that.
And
Hopefully
One of
get-
the, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's
but
okay.
we're looking at trying to change things over to YouTube, but it does come with some, we just got to make sure it fits what we want to do. But that's a storage space that's kind of unlimited because it's attached to our Google account.
Okay,
So it does give us the ability, like we talk about like archiving, it's transferring it over there. So basically, you still have access to it. Like one of the things we're trying tonight, we're actually doing a YouTube at the same time. We're doing our normal stuff to the public. We're also trying a YouTube site just to try that out and make sure everything works correctly, so
Okay.
we can do that on the side as well.
oh, good, thank you.
YouTube also automatically makes it ADA compliant. So you don't have to do any work behind the scenes.
Okay, so next topic also falls along with you, Mr. Dotson. So I had a citizen get in touch with me, sent me a link to another school somewhere that she thought was a really great idea, and after reading into it, I thought it was kind of a pretty good idea too, and it has to do with the monitoring of the school computers. And not just the monitoring, but sending sort of a report for that child's login on what they're looking at on the computer, what they've searched for, and that kind of stuff, and sending it directly to the parent. I thought, if I was a parent with kids here at school right now, I would love to have that. I would love to know what they're doing every day. Now, obviously, I don't think every parent is going to go through tooth and nail every link that they go through. But I think seeing an overview and just kind of getting a gist, and obviously if a parent sees an issue, then they'll start looking into it deeper. But I think it's a great idea to provide that information to parents. Is that possible? Can we do that?
Yes, we actually, this year, you might have gotten a letter with the kids about Go Guardian.
Yes.
The Go Guardian allows our teachers to oversee it, but it also has a site, or has an aspect that allows the parents to log in as well.
Okay.
So one of the projects we have been working on this summer is along that lines of allowing parents to get on that. We wanted to make sure our teachers had a better understanding, so we've done some training. Ms. Kim Adams has done a lot of training with the teachers for this year to make sure they understood how to use it. You know, it's pretty self-explanatory once you get the hang of it, but you've got to be able to upload your classes, you've got to be able to do a couple things with it to make sure you're not blocking one kid from being able to go do something in another class because you only wanted them on the test that day, that sort of thing. With the new piece that we're going to add, it does give parents access to basically see kind of what you're talking about. It's not going to be a breakdown of every single piece, but it's going to give them a good idea of what they looked at that day and basically give them exactly what you're talking about. But it's going to be, instead of the piece of paper going home, they'll be able to log in just like they would for, let's say, Parent Portal for PowerSchool. So they'll be able to look exactly what their kid's looking at and see all of the kids that are within the family.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Can I piggyback on that a little bit? Just a couple of questions as far as when parents get access to all these things, and I know they have access to a lot. I don't know how often they use them. Some parents probably a lot, and other parents probably not at all. But how do they find out how to use it? I mean, do we just give them a list of the computer programs and then we give them access codes?
Well, actually, you've actually asked a really great question. That's one of the things we've been working on this week. In the past, the way we worked it is basically the parents who wanted access just kind of called into the schools, and that information was held at the schools. So if you wanted little Johnny's, information on how to, and Parent Portal was really the only thing we offered to a big extent. And Parent Portal, if you're not familiar, that's where you get your grades. I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So one of the things we've worked on along with, it comes into play with Go Guardian, we're also working on our Blackboard website, which I know you guys have heard about. We're trying to get the website up and going. But there's so many more pieces to it. It actually is a bundle package for us. So it's not only going to be a new website for our district and all of our schools, but we also have mass communications going through that. We're also going to have a communications app that goes through that. So we're going to have the ability to basically sit down and type out an email and either have an automated voice or one of our voices come over and we can hit a slap of a button, basically hit Facebook, any social media we want, anything on our website, send out the phone call, all within the same button. So we've been working on that since last September, October, trying to get all the pieces together. What we're running into right now is when we talk about PowerSchool, that's where everything pulls from. So PowerSchool is basically our, how we run our system. So when we talk to Blackboard and they want to download our data or they basically want us to send our reports to them, we're running into some problems because we just have to make sure PowerSchool is almost absolutely perfect for all that to run. So when we get an email that isn't working correctly because it's an email from a parent that set their kid up, register them in kindergarten, they've been in school for 7 years, but mommy or daddy doesn't use that particular email anymore, or you have situations where mom or dad doesn't have access to the child anymore. They're not supposed to get information. It's just there's a lot of little things that we got to try to figure out on our end to try to make all of that work. But at that point, when we get all of that to work, we can then essentially send that information out to the parents via the emails. So all that access, when we talk about Parent Portal, they don't have to call in anymore. Everyone will have access to it as long as we have a up-to-date email for you or the guardians or the parents. So we're trying to fix it to where you don't have to call in to get it special. We're going to have it automatically to where we can also fix the logins to where it's something that's associated with you or your family or whatever it is to make it easy for you.
So the way they get in, will it carry over from year to year?
Yes, ma'am.
As well?
Yeah. So they'll have access, particularly with the, one of the aspects of the Blackboard app, it's going to give them access to all of their Power School information, what the grades are going to be, the attendance for each class. They'll be able to look up if little Johnny missed first block but made it to second block, the parents are going to know it. We can get as fancy as sending out the parent, the lunch schedule and how much money they owe.
That'll be nice.
There's a lot of things we can do with it. We're going to try to stay simple to start so that we don't, it's just I would say this, our technology, we've taken on a lot of projects this summer, and a lot of them kind of running over top of each other because it's pieces we got to pull for the same thing. But once it's all said and done, it should be really great. It should be a great way to communicate with parents, and it should be very easy for us to be able to do it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's just a lot of information, because I know when I go in and look at the different programs, I can't get in them because I don't have access to them. But if it all goes into one big pot, so to speak, that'll be nice.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll be
As long as we
really
have
good.
as long as the email is correct, we can make that email your login for everything. And then
Yeah,
you set the
that'd be
password
nice.
as to what you want it to be.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so it would make it much easier on the parents.
When do you think, when do you think you'll be pushing that out and going live with it?
We have we are going to attempt to have everything up and running by the time school starts. So we want to have, that's a big hope. The teachers are basically, the principals are working on getting us the information to get to the parents when it comes to curriculum, when it comes to the syllabus and all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of have a date that we're trying to look at. That's going to come to us about a week and a half, 2 weeks before school starts. So we'd like to have that up and running as fast as we can to try to get that uploaded and have everything kind of come out about the same time. It's probably going to be tough for the app. We just got started on that this summer, so it's a little bit of, we have to go through several meetings with Blackboard before we can kind of get it up and running on both our end and their end. So we're probably a good month or two out before we get that up and running, but the website, the mass communication, all that should be up and running hopefully as we start school. It's those guys in there. I would say we got an incredible crew. Our technology departments, we've grown over the last little bit, but we got some great people there that they work hard and they find solutions to things. It's not just sit around and talk about problems. They find solutions, so it's great. It's a great group of people.
Mr. Sheets?
Oh, you go.
I have a question just concerning sort of piggybacking off of that, not mass communication, but I'm just curious. Again, I went through the policy manual, and FYI, you can use this policy too to address some parent questions. IIBE is the technology policy, technology use policy. And I was just curious how we are addressing digital citizenship skills and where we're including that in school, K-12.
I know when we came for our walkthrough, Mrs. Ford, they were doing the class in the library in there. and
That's what I was going to
They
speak
were
to.
hitting that
That's
pretty
how-
hard.
Media Center?
Yeah, basically, I know as a former principal, I know a lot of it's run through the media center. Ms. Ford, I know for Wetzel, I know that she.
Are we using a product or,
At that point in time,
Are
no,
they-
ma'am, I don't believe so. I think it was
Okay.
more of we looked through the standards that were associated with it to make sure we were trying to hit them. And a lot of it is also run through, I want to say, Ms. Daniels' class when it comes to some of the business stuff that she does.
Okay.
She also did her seventh grade class that looks at some of the careers also include some of that. So it's kind of mixed in, not specifically, this is the class you're going to take, or it's kind of mixed in across the curriculum a little bit. But Ms. Ford did take care of a lot of that, for sure.
there's a free certification, I don't know if you know about it, but there's a free certification. You can do a school certification, teacher certification, school certification, and a division certification through Common Sense Media, and it's completely free. So I would encourage you guys to, I'm going to stay in my lane and not be the technology person over here, but I would encourage you guys to look at that. It's really good stuff, and it doesn't cost anything.
And that is definitely one of the things we're looking at with Ms. Adams. That's one of the pieces that she's going into the classes. We'll get a lot more of the, we've already got it set up with principals this year to come in first thing with the faculty meetings to talk to the teachers about security, how to treat your equipment, just, get into some of the basic stuff, but then also allowing her to push into some of the schools to basically teach some of that stuff to the kids as well.
One of the things that I love
Especially
about
through
it, I'm sorry. I
Oh, no,
thought you
you're fine,
were.
go ahead.
One of the things that I love about it, it brings the parents in the conversation. And so you actually have a technology contract that the kids write with, of course, Common Sense Media, some language and some guidance, but it brings that parent in to the conversation. So not just using the technology at school, but using the technology at home. And, you know, one idea is all phones, all computers go on the basket in the kitchen and they don't go in bedrooms. You know, that kind of thing. And so it brings that parent component in. And they also host parent nights. You can bring in a Common Sense educator from Common Sense Media. That part's not free, but it doesn't cost a whole lot. But you can host parent nights, best practice nights, just so we're all, on the same page. It takes a community, to keep us safe, and the parents should be involved in that too. So that's the part I love about Common Sense Media is it's very articulate, huh? We've had it. They'll come here. They've been in Charlottesville. I'll just say that. They'll come here. They'll Zoom with you. I mean, they're amazing folks. And Google also has a little bit of a curriculum. I don't love it as much as I love Common Sense Media. And I'm getting back in my lane. Sorry. It's my passion.
They have a San Francisco headquarters, a New York office, and an Arizona office in Phoenix.
Yeah, they've been here. We've had them.
Go there.
I'd wait till after the monsoon season in Arizona right now.
Well, where are we at? Right.
You got a couple more?
Keep going. Sorry,
Okay.
I just kind of.
I'll be the first to admit when I make a mistake, and one of my mistakes I make often is to assume things. And I just assumed that Robert's Rules of Order was just what we used. Apparently, as each new board is elected in or starts their sworn in or whatever, it is up to them to vote and accept whatever type of rules of order they have. So I mentioned it at the last meeting, and I think the Robert's Rules, everybody talks about Robert's Rules of Order. It just seems, it's second place to anybody having a meeting. So version 12 is the latest version that's out, and I don't know what we need to do, but I think we need to have some commonality on our meetings and get them under a rule like regulation for how we run the meetings.
Do you know if that was done a long time ago? Because we really didn't talk about it last year or the year before, or any year since I've been on the board.
It hasn't been talked about since I've been on the board.
Yeah, it's just
It's just
assumed that
been
we.
right, it's been the default. So
Yeah.
I know we have sent you the title of the books we have for Robert's Rules in the office, because that's what we use when we're setting up meetings or trying to offer advice. So if you want to solidify it, we can add it to the action items
Well,
on Monday night.
I think we should, and it doesn't hold, we could do another vote and choose a different version if it needed to be down the road, but after this 4-year term, the newly elected sworn-in board for the next 4 years, it would have to be adopted again. It doesn't carry over. So, I'm for it. I think it'll help us with a guideline as far as the meetings go and what we can do and what we can't do. And then, on a side note to that, I would also like to define what criteria needs to be met to call. I want to do 2 different ones. Of course, regular meetings are standard. We know how to do that. Not a big deal. Special meetings and emergency meetings, I think they're 2 different things. And I think we need to have criteria set up so that we know what needs to be done to call each one of those when necessary.
Now, I haven't looked that up in Robert's Rules, but I think that's in the code, isn't it?
Yes, I was pulling up what we have.
Okay, that's in the code, that part. Robert's Rules is parliamentary procedure, pretty much.
So the way the Virginia code works is it also gives us our privilege to define what we call an emergency meeting or a special meeting. And so we have to define that. We can't just call a special meeting and not know what a special meeting is. We can't call an emergency meeting unless we have a detail on what an emergency meeting is. You know, is emergency meeting is life or limb in jeopardy, okay? So to me, that's whatever I might want to add to it. A special meeting is something like, let's just say we're getting ready to adopt another curriculum, and we're going to lose the opportunity to save a bunch of money if we don't do it within the next 2 weeks. So then we can call it, that's a special meeting. So I think we need to define what the terms mean, special and emergency.
Okay. I think if we just provide that information, I don't think there needs to be a vote. There doesn't need to be a committee. We just need to define that, is what I'm thinking.
That would affect a policy, so I
Do we
would
need to write a
suggest
new
for
one?
next meeting, maybe come with a draft of what you would like,
Okay.
and then discuss it and information at the next meeting, and then in September, we'd be ready to go.
Yeah, I think it'd be really good to have I don't know if it's called a policy, but it's a policy or something that says this is the bylaws. And I think it can say a couple of things. I can say, hey, we will abide by Robert's Rules of Orders, version 12, whatever, which is, as I understand it, is sort of within the meeting, how the meeting is run. And then we also address things like, this is a special meeting, this is when a special meeting can be run, this is what's required for a special meeting, this is what an emergency meeting is, this is what criteria for being called, who can call it, things like that. So, but I think we have a draft, and we can, I don't know, we can work together or whatever to get a draft together, maybe explain that at the next meeting, lay it out at the next meeting, and that people think about it, comment, and then vote on it at a future meeting. Does that make sense?
And I'll send each board member what we have now, so that you can get started on the revision.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
I was just going to add, in the policy manual, in section B, that is essentially our bylaws.
What section?
Section B of the policy manual. So there's,
It's called board governance.
yeah,
and
board
operations.
governance and operations. So that's our sort of bylaws, our policies.
Our Robert's Rules?
Our, even bigger than that. Like it goes over legal status and powers and duties
Yeah.
and board member authority and student representative to the board and oath of office. And I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot
Conflict of
stuff.
interest, organizational meetings, officers, school board clerk, committees. It goes, I mean, it's like 20 of them or more.
Cool.
That's where we would put something in
Or a new
there.
policy, whatever we
Yeah, that's where
decided.
we'd either
Yeah.
add a policy or change one of those to address Robert's Rules of Order and anything else we wanted to define.
Okay.
Last thing, unless Mr. Quinn.
Sorry.
Do you really have time to do a draft by Monday? I would say let's gather information for this next meeting, and then draft by September.
There is a policy,
Mm-hmm.
BDDE, Rules of Order. I've been doing a lot of reading.
Yeah, you,
BDDE, Rules of Order. And then there's BDDF, Voting Methods.
there's a whole bunch of stuff in there.
There's
I've
all
looked at
kinds
it
of stuff
too,
in here.
But I don't know. No.
Right, I'll gather it all and like send you a
But-
little package, like, there you go.
There's
Or
nothing-
tell us which ones
Mm-hmm.
to like focus in on.
There's nothing in there about Robert's rules, though. I don't think
I
I
It's
don't
just,
know.
it
I
just
can
says
get
the
there.
board establishes rules of order and may adopt bylaws, policies, and
Yeah,
regulations.
but I mean.
It doesn't
not
specify
Robert's
which
rules.
ones.
I don't even know if there's anything other than Robert's rules. That's all you ever hear anybody talking about. Is there another book that has parliamentary procedure in it?
I learned
We just
Robert's Rule,
always-
I mean,
we just
I learned Robert's Rules
defaulted, so.
of Order in 4-H. And that's what I have always, any committee that I've ever been on has been
It runs pretty much.
Robert's Rules of Orders.
Yeah, same way.
Church business meeting is Robert's
Yeah,
Rules
they
of
do.
Orders. I mean, everything that I've ever been on has been Robert's Rules of Order. Now, that's education in church, but.
Should we just then, to clarify, should we just vote on that on next week, saying we'll adopt Robert's Rules, version 12, and you vote on that, and that be done?
Right.
And then we can go forward and look at the other stuff, the special needs emergencies, and write a draft on that over the next month or two. Does that make sense? Does that sound good?
That works.
Can we get the,
Would you rather say Robert's Rules of Order current version instead of locking
Yeah,
into it?
Yeah, let's do that.
Absolutely.
yes, otherwise we can change it.
And we will get you
Because in
books
a
for
couple
that.
years, it'll be 13.
I don't have the new one.
We'll get you a
I don't
new
have a
book.
new one. Make
We'll
large
also
print.
get you the guide that we use if you would like.
Perfect. That would be great. I think I have version 4.
Okay, last but not least, I spoke momentarily to Damon before the meeting. He's making some funeral arrangements, but he's very passionate about the next thing I'm going to bring up, and so am I. This is not a blanket term. We don't have a school full of bad children. We don't have a school full of disrespectful children. We don't. That's not the thing. But my point is, we do have some bad conduct in the schools. And I understand that we want to keep attendance up in schools. And the money's tied to that. We want to keep, if we got so many days for kids to be in school, they need to be in school. They've got to be in school for a certain number of days. And if they're suspended or kicked out, then, we're losing those days, right? So we could possibly have failures. We could have children that don't get to the next grade. I guess we lose funding if the children aren't in school for the whole year, right? So but we've got to start somewhere. And again, I'll bring this up again. I don't think misconduct in school is a school-initiated problem. I know that when I was in school, I would go to school, and that was my chance to get away from my parents, kind of do what I want. I got into a lot of trouble, but I was also afraid for my parents to find out because I was going to be in more trouble when I got home. So the conduct of children, what can we do to not promote the bad behavior? And I say punish, but really, frown down upon the bad behavior. And if children are disruptive, think about it. Let's just say that if we had an average of one child per class causing an issue, and there's 20 kids in the class, 19 children in that class are not getting the education that they deserve. So we have to draw a line and say, look, if your kid's not acting right in school, he's coming home, you're going to have to come pick him up and get this stuff straight. There needs to be some accountability somewhere. I had a heartfelt conversation with a principal, and she explained to me stories of how not only does she have a problem with the children in the school, but the parents come in and basically because their child's in trouble, she gets cussed out. And I find that so hard to believe, but I know it's happening. She's not making it up. That was not the case when I was in school. If you messed up in school, my parents and the teachers and the administration were on the same side. And I'd better get my act together. And I had to. And I did get kicked out a couple times. And the work that I had to do at home to make up for it was not worth the trouble that I got into in school. So we've got to drive this somehow. And I know that I'm just bringing up a complaint, bringing up an issue. But I know that the fixes that I have won't work well for everyone. So what can we do? What can we do to kind of drive the nail home saying, look, you're going to be respectful of your teachers, the administration, of elders in the school. The foul mouth stuff's got to go, bad words. Just how do we hold students accountable? Because still we've got a drive that we want to keep kids in school. So I don't know what to do.
So the answer to that is like in a big old bucket, okay? It's not a simple, I'm not going to say, hey, here's the magic answer to this. No. So very basic to start. We have a student code of conduct that goes home to every parent at the beginning of the year. They have to sign off that they've seen it. So it's important that people actually do read that over at home, if they will. But it is what our principals use to guide the behaviors. And It's in our policy manual, but it's also sent out in our handbooks each year. But that is lots of interventions that go on. It tells you if you do a certain behavior, a principal can do up to these things as your consequences. So that's like very basic answer. Principals and teachers, they all in the buildings, they have protocols for how long a disruptive student's going to stay in there. There's interventions in place. There's different interventions in place for different students based on their own individual education plans or just things going on with that student. So that's kind of the very short version of discipline in a nutshell. Then you have the big, like, school-wide, community-wide approach. I said something to Karen the other day that this whole kind of situation right now that we have going on was reminding me of this. And the school where I first started teaching, we had 3 R's: right, responsibility, and respect. And it was we talked about it all the time. It was for students, it was for teachers, it was for parents, it was for administrators. We all have rights. We have the right to know our rights, but we also have the responsibility to know our rights when we can use our rights and the rights of others. And we have to have respect in all situations for all adults, all peers, based on our rights and their rights. So it's just like having a community conversation in the schools among ourselves. Some problems might be a little more difficult for us because some things are hard for adults when you talk about discipline and being disruptive, not just like, I know you were kind of talking more about classroom disruptions, but just kind of school-wide disruptions in general. This kind of takes us into a conversation where we're worried about hate speech and things. We need to focus on that, and I think like things like the 3 R's help us with that, because if you see at our own board meetings, we've had sometimes certain groups of people that have been disrespectful to each other here, but we want our students to act perfect and not act that way at school. So I think we have to model a lot of the behavior as well. Unfortunately, we do have situations that happen like the principal was telling you about, where parents come in and they do focus sometimes the bad behavior on, the adults do that instead. But that's sometimes people just need support and help, and they're at a loss at that point when they come into the office, because this is a school building. We're trying to help their child. They clearly want to help their child. So sometimes when you get down to it, but of course that behavior is not appropriate in any situation. But we do need to help kids learn to respect others, to manage conflicts, to manage their own emotions when they're sitting in classes. So that's where our counselors and programs that we have come into play. I know the word social emotional learning is not popular right now, but like our character ed program is another thing we call it. That's when programs like that are important. Citizenship.
Being a good
that's where that
citizen.
comes in. Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. So that's when that comes into play. So it's just a big bucket where we care about the academics, but this is the whole other side of it, is how do we become a good citizen, which ties into something that Mr. Wingate's very passionate about as well. So I know that answer was all over the place, but it's a complicated answer to that question.
I know, and this carries over onto the school bus. I mean, I can be the first to tell you, the worst words I've ever used, I learned on a school bus.
Sure.
I mean, that's where it comes from. There are families that use that word, some bad words, but a lot of times it's, when I was little, I was a pretty good kid. I mean, you just
Peer
learn bad
pressure.
stuff, right?
Mhm.
And peer pressure. And, there was a time when the respect was learned at home, and then it was reinforced at school. And I feel like we're to the point now where we're trying to teach it in school because it's not being learned at home. And again, I'm not saying that it's everyone. I'm just saying, when the kid's acting up, that's what I hear. I don't hear about all the good kids that are doing good. I hear parents upset because this kid tore up a room and they had to evacuate the room so that they could get the kid calmed down. And we're losing learning opportunities for these children when we're trying
And
to
we have to
babysit.
win their trust. And I think right now there's a lot of students that don't think we're for them. So I think that's important as well. And I saw it in the last board meeting. It's not only the students now that maybe feel like they don't belong because of some things like in the community being said. We actually had, I think he said he was a pastor. I apologize if he wasn't. Stand up and say that students can't pray in school and can't bring their Bibles to school. Well, yes, they can. So I think students really need to know what rights they have And they need to feel respected no matter who they are, what their background is, what their beliefs are, what their gender identity, anything. They need to know that they're kids, that we love them, and we got to figure out how to project that so kids feel like they belong in our schools, because that's going to help with behavior.
I also think that there's a lot of misinformation out there too. And then sometimes things are spread without people actually finding out what the circumstances were. And I think people get angry very quickly right now, it just seems. And so I think the kids are sometimes on the defensive, like, you can't tell me what to do. And then they react, and then, I just think it's almost like a reaction, a chain reaction from one thing to the other. But it is a concern, and it's a serious one that I'm glad you brought up, because there is responsibility from lots of different parties on this.
And like I mentioned, Damon, he wanted to be part of this conversation tonight, but I told him, I said, well, I'll say whatever's on my mind, and then if we want to pick it back up, and, because he had some good points to bring up.
And we do try to bring as many supports into place for students that we can, especially students that are, you're going to have your kid that just has a bad day and they get in trouble. But there are kids that are in trouble often, and that's where those students have a special plan in place and constantly seeking ways that we can help improve their behavior.
I think too, whatever you guys, in terms of citizenship and the 3 Rs, whatever is adopted, that's not really the right word, but whatever you guys use, I think one thing that we miss in education is we teach the teachers and we teach the principals, but we don't teach the cafeteria workers and we don't teach the bus drivers how to use the same consistent language. And the TAs and everybody that touches a kid's life. Like, if this is what's working, then everybody needs to be using the same language and using consistent words and using consistent language and consistent behavior. Like, if something happens in room A, I can get away with it here, but in room C, I can't. So we need to be all on the same page. It's a community effort, So that's just my 2 cents.
One of the just to follow up on that, and curious, Ms. Graham, about what your take is. One of the things I hear from teachers, maybe probably the number one thing I hear most frequently is sometimes a concern about that discipline and children being returned to the classroom before the teacher thinks that maybe they should be returned to the classroom. And of course, it's a balancing act. I know that. But what's your, how do you balance that?
It's like the age-old problem in a school. And I have a couple other former principals on the stage. It's more a balancing act for your school administrators. How many places are open to safely and not tuck the student away, but where can you put a student that's been disruptive so they're still learning if the parent's unable to come get them? What is the fine line where, okay, they've served their time, they've done their consequence, they need to go back into the class because they're missing learning? And that answer is different depending on the kid, what happened, the circumstance. I don't know if anybody else has been. It's just by student, it's hard to really answer.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I
Case.
mean, you're considering multiple different things. ISS is always your first consideration to get the kid a little break, something like that. But if you've got, if it's a bad Friday, full moon type
Like
deal,
lined up.
ISS is probably already full by 2:30. So you're looking at other options. You already have a kid that's in your office, assistant principal has a kid in their office. You have nowhere else to put them, so you go be able to go back to class for half an hour and do what you're supposed to.
Right, you will
Yes, sir.
until-
You send them back to class. I mean, you're never looking to create issues for the teacher, but you are you're handicapped sometimes with what you can do as resources that you have. So as much as we don't want to do that, and we tell the teachers all the time, we don't want to bring a kid, most of the time we try to at least, when we talked about it was at least try to keep you out of that class. So if you got into a little tiff with the teacher and a back and forth, we tried to give you at least a break of that class, so you're not going back in and, having a, reaction to that. But if we couldn't, I mean, it's just, it's never a great answer of, no, we're absolutely not going to do this.
I mean, it's
But-
an impossible question, and I know you know that far more than us. But I guess I just want, that is probably the number one concern I hear from teachers is that. I mean, I'm sure you're not surprised by that. And I don't know what the answer is, except to be aware, to be aware. And I guess make sure the teachers know that you wrestle with that all the time. I think that will help. I mean, I think they know that already, but maybe the new teachers to know that you wrestle with that and that you're not doing that lightly ever. I'm sure they know that also, but just an important thing to reinforce to them probably.
You know what would help reinforce it for me if I was in school again? If I got back to the class and had to tell the class, I'm sorry for doing X, Y, Z. Please forgive me for messing up. May I be allowed to come back to the class, in front of the class? And that would pretty much cut out any more acting up for me for at least a couple weeks until I had to do it again. But okay, Nita, you're up.
Well, I just have three policy questions and stuff that I would like to add. Of course, we can talk about it, but in policy, IGAE, health education, physical education, and also school year, school day, it's addressed in that as well, and that is policy IC-ID. And this is just about recess, and it's more about little elementary students. I'm pretty passionate, and I can get you all kinds of scholarly articles if you'd like to read that. But studies that have been done around elementary kids and recess being used as a disciplinary action. I'm strongly against that. Kids need to move, and it doesn't work. Take their recess away and make them go back to class and sit still more. They need to go outside and play more and resolve conflict. And I think that we would have, if they were able to resolve conflict at an early age, during Foursquare or, playing in centers, whatever, then we would have hopefully less conflict at an older age. And there's just tons of articles out there that say kids need at least 20 minutes twice a day for recess. Tons of articles. That does not include PE. So I would like in those policy manuals, it's addressed in both of them. And I would just like a sentence to be added that says teachers may not use recess as a disciplinary action. If my colleagues aren't.
I'm like, I don't even know what to say, because it doesn't make sense to reward children for bad behavior. If they want to go out and have recess, then you take things away when you're trying to set an example for a child. I'm not sure.
I
we're
get
doing
it,
that.
but we're doing it.
Okay.
That is probably the biggest parent complaint I get at the elementary level, is the kids get told they can't sit still, but they get their recess taken away.
Yeah, I'm in
So-
100%
Me too.
agreement.
It doesn't make sense to me at all. I have kids tell me, my recess was taken away today. And sometimes it isn't even a student discipline issue. Something didn't get signed from home, and their recess got taken away. Well, that's not the kid's fault.
Okay, all right.
That's the
In
parent's
that
fault.
case, yeah.
We're in two different books.
Yeah.
So both scenarios I have been approached with in the past 6 months around recess, well, since January.
I'm for giving them a break earlier and recess and another break, but if they're messing up in class and they lose the recess, then that's so be it. I mean, it's disciplinary. My kids lose time doing stuff all the time, and they're acting up.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, I take away things all the time too, but when little kids need to move, they can't sit still for 7.5 hours. It's just not possible. What'd you say, Donald?
What you're saying is being a little bit more like proactive in our approach, meaning the kid that you know is getting in trouble because they can't sit still, don't punish them in the way that you know they can't help it.
Don't take away that recess.
But also a kid who can sit still, who might actually learn from the fact that they don't need to go to recess that day. I understand, like, it's kind of a catch-22
And
because
if
it's
a mom or a
specific
dad,
to the kid.
yeah, And if a mom or a dad hasn't turned in a piece of paper and the kid gets 5 minutes taken off their recess, that is just not okay. Absolutely not okay. That is not that child's fault. So I'm concerned about recess time and making sure kids have enough ability to have conflict. Absolutely have a conflict about Foursquare, but work it out. You know, they need to have time to do that and resolve it as children during play.
Yeah, I have a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, and 11-year-old. I 100% support the idea that they need to move around, because we try to teach them and do stuff, man. If they're not doing more than half an hour, so I fully support, everybody knows that. I fully support what you're saying.
So I just want to somehow put those words in those two as appropriate or something, in those two policies. And then the third one, I just have a question about, and it was in the list that you gave us, Ms. Graham, last month. And it was EEAD, special use of school buses. And it says that we certainly support community use in certain scenarios, and I'm all good with that. But I'm curious if we have a standard chart that we charge folks. Or is it all over the place, or is it per certain things? So I'm in support of transporting students, all students, from one place to the other, whether it's our event or not. And supporting community events like Taste of the Mountains, whatever else happens, you know. But I'm curious if we just have a standard chart of do we charge those folks?
4-H uses it.
We do not charge? Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Do
we don't charge, but they pay the driver and our fuel to
Okay.
use it.
Which I think is appropriate, but I don't want to like make money on it, you know,
I don't
like.
think there's anybody we can
Do we get a lot of requests for that? No? Okay.
We don't have a standard set. And we don't, okay. Just a question. As long as we're supporting the community
Definitely.
events and making sure that people get to where they need to go is important to me, and not charging them an arm and a leg. Not making money on that. Like, they can pay for the fuel, obviously.
try to
I mean,
help out
fuel
the
is
community.
a cost, but, you know, not charging an arm, like being a community partner.
Right.
Okay. And then finally, the last one, and I'll be quiet, is JED, which is student absences, excuses, and dismissals. And in something that we have to decide on next week, so I wanted to bring it up. It says, parents of students who are absent must inform the school of the reason for the absence no later than upon the student's return to school. Absences are excused for the following reasons. For middle and high school students, 1 day per school year to engage in a civic event, and then a maximum of blank school days, which is what we have to choose, per academic year for participation in 4-H educational programs or activities. And then it goes on to talk about no credit, and obviously they can't take the standards of learning assessment if they're not there. And then the last one is subject to guidelines established by the Virginia Department of Education. Students who are members of state or federally recognized travel nations that is headquartered in Virginia shall be granted excused absences for their activities. But the second bullet is the one that I'm pretty passionate about, and releasing kids from school with no issues, no consequences, for 4-H. It is hard to put a day on that, a number on that. So I'll just tell you that there are kids that participate in 2 days a year, and then there's kids that go on to participate in 10 or 15, maybe even 20 days per year, because they're going to tech, and they're going to do these public speaking things, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do that. And in my opinion, my biased opinion, I'm pretty sure it's biased, in my biased opinion, that is an equal education opportunity for a child that's here in school.
Agreed.
It is equal. They are learning a ton. And so, and I will contribute all of my passions and academics to 95% of it to 4-H. So I'm struggling with picking a day, picking a number, unless we pick this exorbitant number, like 45 days. Because it really is unique to each student that has different passions for that program. I mean, they can be gone a week, 2 weeks, really, if you
Yeah,
if
Richmond
you
State Fair is
shoot.
2 weeks,
Yes.
and Madison's a week, so that's 3 weeks right there. in
So
the
they
school
could be
year.
gone 2 full weeks if they choose to show different kinds of animals at the state fair. Like, the first week is for a certain kind of livestock, and the second week is for a different kind of livestock. So if they're showing both, that's 2 weeks right there, so there's 10 days. There's 10 days right there. And then if they go do the public speaking competition at Virginia Tech, that's another week. So if the same kid is showing all these livestock animals and they're into public speaking, then there's 3 weeks.
What's
So we're
criteria
up
for
to
FFA?
15 days. What's what?
What's criteria for FFA? When they have to go on
I don't know. It doesn't address FFA in here.
okay.
I knew this would be coming up too, and I wondered what the days would be, because we have to guarantee that the child has had seat time too, and that they have had the instruction that they need. And I don't know how we get beyond that, because if you have a child that, I mean, there's got to be a way to balance it too, because if you are doing algebra and you're gone for 2 weeks, how do you make that work up? And I'm not saying that, you know, I'm just saying, what is the solution when you come back? Because you need instruction in order for that to happen. So is there a way to create something so that the child that has to be out somehow gets the instruction as well?
But they're also, I mean, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
And this is why it's a conversation. But there's also, they are representing Madison County. These kids go far, and they are representing Madison County.
So students now that go to the state fair, are they typically just missing the days, or are they going down for a day or two and coming back? Like,
No, you
what do
have
they
to
do?
stay. So the one scenario, if you show livestock, the second week, so any kid that shows a cow, a sheep, a goat, a pig at the state fair, they have to arrive on Wednesday. They have to. And those animals are not released. They cannot pick those animals up, and you have to be there 2 times a day to feed your animal. They cannot be released until 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. And then you have to get out of the state fair parking. I mean, get out of the whole stuff. So,
So do we currently have kids that miss all 3 of those days, or do they help each other and different people
oh
feed?
no, you have to be down there. You have to be down there. And yes, there were, I said the number last year, close to like 35 kids, 40 kids that were representing Madison County at the state level. And then there's, I mean, that doesn't even, and we're not even in that, but there's regional levels, there's national levels. So if you go on to do that, then you're out even more.
Does the state set a minimum number of days that Ms. Allen was talking about? Does the state say you have to be in the seats 100 and whatever days?
It's hours.
Or hours.
But, yeah, it's 8 hours, but they're also saying that this is excusable, so that's weird.
Yeah, so this is excused versus unexcused absences.
I think it comes, all right, so if my children are in 4-H and they're getting ready to go down to the state fair, and I'm looking at their grades and I'm like, this ain't looking too good. You're just not gonna be able to do the state fair. And you got to get your grades up. I mean, that's one of the priorities that I've known my whole life is schools first, get your grades up. And those parents that, they know their children and the grades are up, and if they want to send them, I mean, I feel like that's sort of like a burden on the parent. That's the parent's choice, whether they want them, if the child fails school because they missed the Algebra 2 work for that 2 weeks and they didn't get the right grade and they failed, and so be it. They just have to do it over again. It's just, they'll probably be better at the end of that year.
So could we just leave that blank and say, what's the wording in the sentence?
It says a maximum of blank school days, there's just nothing there.
It's just open space.
A maximum of blank school days per academic year for participation in 4-H educational programs or activities. I'll read the whole thing. No credit will be provided for a student whose participation in a 4-H educational program or activity occurs during scheduled standards of learning assessments or during any period of time that the student is suspended or expelled from school. The student's principal or assistant principal may request a representative of 4-H, which she does all the time, to provide documentation of a student's participation in order for the student's absence to be excused. I mean, part of 4-H is citizenship. And, I mean, you're expected to do well at school. I mean, it's an expectation, so you're expected to do well at school, you're expected to have a good standing in the club that you're in to be able to participate anyway. There's a whole standard of stuff that they have to do. They have to participate in 4 hours of quality assurance for taking care of livestock. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that have to be done. But we have to set a number. To answer your question, Chris.
Do we have to set a number? And what about just saying, I mean, we do have to set a number?
Isn't that a new law that we have to set a number? I think it just passed a new law.
I'm good with
Well, what about just a big number to kind of
20
50 days? I don't
30,
know.
45 days. Like, I don't think it should be a limit. It's up to the family.
Can you do, I just say do it.
It's up to the family.
30 days and have it, it's not more than 2 consecutive weeks.
It's not any different than a child playing a varsity sport and being out of school to go play a sport. This is their sport.
Of course. If we set it up for 30 days, we might have a bunch of people signing up for 4-H.
I don't know. I mean, we vote on it next month, so I just wanted to bring it up here, because,
Well, it was going to be on the
thank you.
agenda next week, but do you want to?
I mean, not next month, next week. That's what I meant to say.
All right.
Did I say next month?
Good.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Next week.
It's August 1st.
Next week.
We're going to vote on it next week.
Yeah.
So we probably should have it. We need a number to put in there so the public
We need a number to
knows.
put in there so she can type it up, but
25. I don't know, 30.
Seriously, I thought 30 days, but I mean, I wouldn't want to see a child miss school for 30 days consecutively, so I think we
yeah,
need
it's
to
not
have a.
I don't think it's ever consecutive. I don't think it would ever be consecutive.
15 consecutive days.
15.
Is there any 4-H
Okay.
functions that?
No.
Okay. This is
No.
like-
The longest 4-H function is the state fair, and
not
that's 2
every-
weeks.
okay.
That's
That's
10
not
days.
every kid 2 weeks.
No.
That's really.
Nope. You're gonna have, I mean, you have to so dairy is the week before. Dairy steers and dairy goats and all that is the week before. And usually, not always, but usually if you're showing a dairy animal, you're not showing a meat animal. Does that make sense? Like,
What would you think would be the typical amount of time a student would miss from school?
so I can give you my personal, I had to come in every year for an attendance meeting, from kindergarten to 7th grade, every year. And I'm looking at Donald because I was across the table from him. I mean, Hunter missed 17 to 25 days a year for 4-H. Every
What-
year I had to come in.
Nita, what,
So why don't let's say 25, and I will reach out to the extension services and get some feedback, even at Tech. I'll reach out, I have contacts at Tech. I'll reach out to Tech too and see what the maximum number of competitions. If the kid does every competition in that school year, what that maximum number would be. Why don't I do that?
Oh,
And I can bring that back next week.
So
I'll email her tonight.
when a student is out of school for a period of time, right now, we're talking about excused and unexcused. Now they're saying that it would be excused, correct? You just have to
Yes.
say the number of days.
Yes, that
But
would be excused.
What, right. What happens to get your son caught up? I mean,
He did the work in between the show ring.
so some of it you can, but.
Oh, yeah.
I
You-
mean, if it's.
I mean, we
read a
prepare-
story and answer things, you can, but my concern is particularly math.
Yeah, I don't think not making up the work is even an option. I mean,
No,
they're
you
gonna
have to
either
make up
it
the work.
Or they're gonna take it home when they get back to school and catch back up.
I mean, he's set on tack boxes, and he still does. He sets on tack boxes and does schoolwork.
Can he do it without the instruction?
We made it work from third grade to seventh grade. Eighth grade, really. We made it work.
It does concern me a little bit.
We
I
made
mean,
it work.
Because sometimes it puts, not the burden, but you want kids to go out and have all these experiences, and I think that's important too. But reasonably, when they're out and they're not getting instruction, it depends on the child. Some children will be able to cruise
does.
right on through, and others will look at you like, I have no idea how to do this. And the parents don't know how to help them either. And so there we are with kids that are behind, and when they go back to class, they're 2 weeks or a week or whatever we want to say ahead. And, a lot of times math builds. If you don't know how to do this, you can't apply it to the next time, and that's a concern for me. But
I agree with you. But I also agree that this is important.
Well, if we ensure every student has access to the resources and educational rigor they need at the right moment in their education, then our teachers will be helping them right out, and we'll be good to go. No stragglers.
we ready to move on?
High expectations.
That's the last thing I had. I have no other questions or concerns.
Are you ready?
I just had a question. Are we, I don't, everybody happy to know, I don't have any, I'm not proposing any controversial policies tonight. But I do have lots of questions about the 5-year plan. Is it a good time to do that now, or are we going to? The 5-year plan.
I have, since we're dealing with a lot of things and just picking up and asking questions like we've been doing, you guys are finished. Do you have questions or just random things you're wondering about?
Nope, I have lots of questions about the 5-year plan is all I
Okay.
have.
Well, I have a couple of things that don't fit into the 5-year plan. So one of them is, there was from Culpeper, and I think you got a copy of it too, with the buses and how they were going to be. Did you get a copy of?
yes, the community
Are we
members.
going to get those for our buses? Because mainly that was about Culpeper, and I had no idea where we were.
It was a question about tracking our buses, but I think the issue was in.
I mean,
our
I'm kind of
mountains,
catching you
right?
cold
We
on
can't
that.
track our buses because of there's just no signal. Yeah.
Okay. See, I hadn't heard anything about that, and somebody asked me about it just today. That's kind of catching you cold on that, and I was wondering about that.
Kind of goes along with the same idea that we thought about trying to increase students' opportunity to do homework up with Wi-Fi on the buses while they were traveling home. But it's the same concept. The kids who need it live too far out for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, so the county's working on the internet stuff, right? So will that help? I probably won't alleviate it all, but I mean, maybe it'll help.
In certain areas, but it's still not going to come in certain problem areas.
Okay.
I don't know if we can ever do. Now we're going to put those.
And, excuse me, and the other one that I had, and I actually had a conversation before with Chris about the ROTC program and the viability of having that in Madison schools. And he gave me a lot of information, which I think I think, never say never, but it's a very expensive thing to do. And so that kind of gives me enough knowledge to be able to answer the parent. Thank you. There's one other one. We'll probably get to that with the 5-year plan, but I also had some concerns from parents about the tech classes and the ones that they wanted to see us happen. And I know Charlie and I spoke a little bit about this as well, because people want us to add to our career and technical offerings. And I would like to see that happen too. I think everybody up here would. But the question is, how do we find out? Like, you'd have to back it up to maybe the 8th or 9th grade, do a survey. The kids would have to say, I'm interested in a vet tech class. But then it takes you a long time to find an instructor, and, it might be 3 children that are interested in it. Or they might say they're interested in 8th grade, you start planning a program for them, and then they say, no, I really don't want to do that. So how do we find out how we can improve that without doing a survey? And is there a way to tag with other counties so that if we have a few children that want to do something, or have a person come in and work with them?
There is, and actually, if you want to talk about the partnership with Orange for this year.
Okay, so, we are this fall sending 3 students to Orange County to participate in their cosmetology program, because, we had closed ours out, and we are working with Renee Honecker and Orange County, and have been able to get that started in a partnership with them. And so that's the kind of thing that we really have to do. And we do survey our students all the way down into middle school and look for those trends. We look for workplace trends. That's a lot of what the CTE Advisory Board talks about at their meetings. And so we just watch for all those opportunities. And I know Betty Jo has done a fabulous job, Ms. Wenham, with trying to work on those things as well. Yeah, in the past, we had the partnership with Rappahannock where we did some exchanges also with culinary there. That has died out for now. But again, we're always watching and talking with our local school division neighbors to see what may be available.
And our CTE programs are monitored by the state, so our CTE programs have to balance with our community needs. The local labor markets have to be reflected in what we offer.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. I mean, it'd be nice if we could do all technical programs that just the children would like to do, but we really need to talk to employers and find out what are they looking for, what do they project in the future to be looking for, and prepare to have those classes. But I agree. And by the way, I think the cosmetology thing is a good idea, because I called Hair Cuttery the other day, and they told me to come back like 3 days later. I remember you could go to Hair Cuttery, not even an appointment, walk in, they'd cut your hair right then. So.
It's because you're going to those fancy places.
No, just call Bever Hair Cuttery.
And the high school does a good job of putting out, like, in their handbook and such, what the base courses that we offer. If you get this foundation, then it could lead you here. So there's core classes that you need that can lead to a lot of different careers. Like, even like computer-aided drafting, CAD classes. That's not just like career typical. It's also, they use that in the fashion industry to design their fabrics and stuff. So there's so much you can take in CTE courses for the base that can build on later.
Transferable skills is worth.
And I said one point that I commend the cosmetology thing. That's awesome. And if people are interested in junior ROTC, Orange does have a ROTC program. So I mean, if that's something that there's enough interest, you could possibly take that ROTC program at Orange High School. It's a lot cheaper alternative.
We'll move on to the long-range plan and policies. Now, are those policies, those are just policies that you saw from last?
These are policies
Yeah.
and my questions and everything.
So They're, okay. So let's move on to the long-range plan and policies. I think people have some ideas, and I'm going to pull mine up. Chris, you want to go ahead and start, because I see you have
Okay.
quite a few notes.
All right, thank you. And some of these questions just reflect my ignorance about the process, so please bear with me. Ms. Graham, how, are these standing, like these, each priority, are these standing committees that continue for this whole time? How does that work?
Actually, we have thought of this today. We have committees that already are standing that kind of cover the priorities. So we have our Special Education Advisory Committee that pretty much covers like priority 1 and 2. We have the Gifted Advisory Committee, again, priority 1 and 2 would be their main topics they discuss. They could definitely go into other categories as well. Career and Tech, that's actually the people listed for priority 4. That is that standing committee. The School Health Advisory Board, those are the people that develop priority 3. Family Life Advisory Board, also priority 3. The new Diversity, Opportunity, Inclusion Task Force, that's the beginning of that. So that would cover priority 2, but also many aspects of priority 1 would be covered in that. The Superintendent's Advisory Committee, that's priority 5 with teacher development and staff and how to develop our staff. And then the CIP Committee, that's priority 6, and they're developed there. So really, one committee that we need, or if you want, would be a Parent Engagement Committee.
So once this long-range plan gets approved, these committees here,
Right.
committees can stand down, is that right?
Right.
And they're
And
kind
most
of
of the
replaced
people are
by
involved.
what you just said?
Right.
Okay. So I guess wondering about then, knowing that, I should have known that before, sorry. Maybe something for us to think about is, are those committees adequate for the new priority 7? And then, as you said, one of the things I'm excited about is this American citizenship thing. You know, is that, I don't know, I'm not trying to make more committees, I guess, but I guess I am thinking about it. Do we need a committee on promoting that American citizenship type thing? I don't know the answer to it, but I just didn't, as you read through those committees, I didn't really hear somebody who was kind of focused on that.
We might need even some like clarification on exactly, I know American citizenship, but like the vision, what vision you have for that, like, because American citizenship is already like part of the curriculum. Maybe we could start there with having our principals, and we could come up with it at central office and use our administrative input, like come up with a list for you on all the ways it's already in the curriculum and look at that and then say, okay, this is where we are, where do we need to be? Would that help? Like what's missing?
Yeah, I think it'd be great to start to kind of know, because as you say, I don't know what I don't know. But we've talked about before. I mean, you know, how do we kind of enhance our civic understanding of our kids? I mean, you know, polls and surveys are surveys, but I read one the other day about something that said people under 45. 20% of American citizens could not pass the U.S. immigration citizenship test. 4 to 5 Americans couldn't pass the U.S. immigration citizenship test. And that's sad. And it seems like we ought to be thinking about how we can keep that from happening in here in Madison. And I imagine Madison's probably better, but it's probably not a whole lot better. So I don't know, just something to think about. You know, I was looking at, and also I'm wondering about in that citizenship thing is, you know, what curriculums and enhancement are out there, and there are lots of other. And I'm not trying to pick any one at all. There's one that I just noticed that was sweet and cute. It's K through 5, called Little Patriots. Again, I'm not trying to recommend that. I'm just saying there are lots of other enhancements out there for civic education. So I just wonder. There needs to be something put together to kind of look at stuff like that as a whole, as we think about.
Are you okay with us pulling together everything we have under like a report? We'll come up with it and then present that, and then let's all
Yes, ma'am.
look at it and see where our holes are.
That sounds good to me. Other questions I have then, based on your answer. I'm just going to kind of go through the 5-year, the long-range plan, and ask my questions. And I don't really know, I guess I don't really, I'm trying to figure out, our responsibility is the priority and the goals. I mean, if we see something that we kind of think is missing, is that our responsibility to say something about that? I mean, is that our place? I don't really know the answer to that question. Our place is definitely the priorities, and then the committee came up with the goals. If, for instance, for priority 1, I think maybe something to be good there about accountability and discipline, because that obviously is tied to excellence in the classroom. And I know it's one focus that we want them, the teachers are interested in, you're interested in. Is that something to think about for one of the priority 1 goals, is talk about how we get at the accountability and discipline Mr. Sheeds was talking about. Maybe there's room for a goal there. Again, I don't know if that's our place really or not. I don't really know how the flow of, once we do the prioritization thing. What do you think? I don't put you on the spot.
Well, I'm going back and forth between priority 1 and priority 2, because if we're looking at the discipline data as part of the Diversity, Opportunity, and Inclusion Task Force, our schools too do their own school plans, and that's often part of the school plans because they're going to be looking at their discipline data. So I think it's covered already.
I defer to you on that. I just, as long as they're covering that, I think it's all of us agree it needs to be looked at, and if it's being looked at the school level, and then that's, I would defer to you on that. All right, I'm moving on to other questions. On number 3, priority 3, and this is an idea, and I should have socialized it and talked about it before. There's kind of a big idea, big thought, wondering about. You've kind of talked about the 3 R's, and a lot of I've heard from a lot of people about concerns about bullying and hate speech and ugly words, and that has no place obviously anywhere. Respect, mutual respect, no matter what the differences are. Citizenship, social emotional learning, all those things are kind of components of this. And I'm wondering, I mean, do we 3 R's, do we need something like for priority 3? I was just thinking and wondering if adding in a phrase where it says, we say implement, sorry, my glasses again, I always forget those stupid things, implement best practices. Maybe we need to add in there something like says, implement an overarching thematic campaign plan and best practices. I mean, do we need a vision that says we have 3 R's or whatever it is, or we're great American citizens, or something that says we're going to respect this. We're not going to put up with bullying. We're not going to put up with ugly language. We're not going to put up with that stuff. Because that's who we are. We're Madisonians, and we're going to respect each other, and we're going to care for one another, and we have 3 R's, and whatever it is. I just wonder if there needs to be some sort of thematic thing to promote that.
The schools do a program, like age-appropriate too. I'm thinking like the primary school fills their buckets. The middle school, you all had Show Your Blue. It covers that. And then like the high school, she Inspire this year, or Integrity, I think is the word for this year. So she's going through a word each year as well. So they each kind of like age appropriately have developed their own character ed programs for each building, and our counselors do a lot helping with that.
Is that enough? I mean, just based on like some of the comments I hear about, the people, the bullying on the bus and stuff like that. I mean, how do we get after that? I don't know the answer to the question, but I'm just wondering in the long range plan if there's something that we should be talking about that says, I don't know, these are the rights, I like the 3 R's, whatever it is, or we're great American citizens, or just something that's kind of ties that together and says we're not going to put up with that kind of language or whatever on the bus and in the classroom and the homeroom, on the basketball court, on the football field. So I don't know the answer to the question. I just think something to think about.
Well, that's our student code of conduct too, that has that in it. Thinking. It's, I mean, it works for some.
It's never going to be a perfect world. I don't know.
That doesn't mean we don't strive for that top bar. I mean, we've got to aim for that.
They have in here, MCPS will foster a community of belonging through character education curriculum and the establishment of strong connections between students and staff members. Students will feel welcome, supported, valued, and respected through the relationships built.
Which one? Where are you?
That's in priority 3 under culture of wellness.
Okay. I don't know, I just want to know what you all think.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking, years ago, each school was separate. There were mountain cats, there were mountain climbers, there were all these things. And we incorporated into We Are Mountaineers. And so all of our schools are now Mountaineers. Point being, I think that what you're saying is to try to come up with some kind of umbrella under which all our kids understand. It would be a dream to have people wanting to hire our children, because our kids were the most respectful kids, the most, hardworking kids. That would be a dream. And I think that with any dream, it starts with, what do we want for our kids? Because it will serve them well throughout their life if they have a sense of respect and responsibility. And so I'm thinking that this might be the beginning of a conversation about that and coming up with something, but it has to be more than words. And it has to be something our parents buy into as well. Yep, something that the parents, when we say, we need your help. We need your help to make sure that your son or daughter has all the tools that they need. And part of it is the respect and the responsibility. And that doesn't, we can teach it and we can model it, but it has to be with parents too. We all have to say, this is what we want for our kids. So that doesn't answer anything. It just says that I think an umbrella idea would be a good one, that, we could promote.
It goes back to consistency.
Yes.
That I was talking about before. If they know at the primary school, you're going to say the same thing at Waverly, that Waverly says, Wetzel says the same thing. High school, in an age-appropriate way, obviously. But it goes back to the consistency of the community believes in this, in the 3 R's, or whatever we want it to be, whatever we want it to be.
I was reading an article not too long ago that they were trying to promote respect from the children to the staff, and it had to do with starting the day right on a bus. And when the children got on the bus, they were greeted by the bus driver. So the bus driver acknowledged, hey, I'm glad you're here today. And then when they got off the bus, the children would say, thank you for bringing me to school today safely. And I thought that would be a way to start if we started. Nobody wants to wait for 12 years. But if we started with the younger ones and said, this is what we expect. When somebody holds a door for you, when somebody does something for you, then a thank you is expected. That's because we're all doing the same thing. And I think we probably do it out of habit, but that habit started somewhere. So I think it's a good idea to look for something. I don't know, I don't have the idea right now, but I think we can do more than we're doing as far as modeling for the children expected behavior.
Yeah, I like the way, I don't think umbrella is a nice way to put it. Looking at the priorities, and as you said, Ms. Graham, maybe for priority number 7, because it's a new priority, we form a committee. And that falls, it kind of naturally falls to promote a partnership. Maybe we add partnership with excellence or something between students, staff, families, and the community. It's kind of like, you won't be surprised, the idea of It Takes a Village by Hillary Clinton. I'm not a big fan probably of Hillary Clinton, but it's that sort of idea of it takes a village. This whole idea, it's a community of working together. So maybe we do that committee around priority 7 that also thinks about the umbrella of trying to model and teach those citizenship, character, skills that keep kids from being disrespectful to everybody. That'd be a useful thing to think about. Can we do that? Can we form a committee about that? Is that something? Does it sound good? Does that sound reasonable to everybody? One other thought on, I think 2 other thoughts on priority, I can barely see this, on priority 5, talking about having excellent teachers and excellence in teachers. What would the possibility be of incentivizing excellence in teaching? And so I love the idea of the pay raise for everybody across the board, so we match Virginia averages. I think it's a noble thing to work toward. But would it be legal, fair, not fair, not about fairness so much, but legal, something to think about recognizing, letting principals, or letting you and the principals recognize their 3, 4, 6 best teachers and giving them a $3,000 bonus, a $5,000 bonus at the end of the year? Merit pay. Have we done that in the past? What do you think about that? And I guess everybody, what do people think about that?
It's a slippery slope because what would be the criteria? What if I'm a teacher that has the students with a lot of discipline problems? Like, it's difficult to set up. It would take a while to plan if we were to do a merit pay system. It's not anything we could start this year.
Yeah.
Like, it would take a while.
I'm not really advocating a merit pay system, I don't
Right.
think. I don't think change anybody's pay. It'd be a bonus type thing. So it's not, it wouldn't be as complicated. I understand your point's well taken. I understand that. I'm not looking to start right away or anything. But I think it was worth a conversation about, because it's incentivizing excellence. And we all know they're excellent teachers. Like any career field, they're fantastic teachers and good teachers. And I don't know, it just seems like a way to motivate excellence. I don't know.
It would just be hard to define that. There's so many different things that teachers do, and teachers teach so many different subjects. Would we just be talking about SOL subject teachers? Would we just be like, how would we define that they did better than their peer? It would just be difficult.
But would it empower principals? If you said principals, you can pick 5% of the workforce. So I don't know what the numbers are and the math is, but in some ways it would empower principals, and maybe teachers would.
You don't want to come out there often.
I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you think?
As a, I guess, former principal, with the reason, I wouldn't want that responsibility. You're picking favorites. That's how it's going to be seen. You're going to be picking favorites. As open as you possibly could be, and this is exactly the criteria, this is how we're doing it. We're not going to pick two people, same person 2 years in a row. We're not going to, it creates, no matter how you do it, teachers aren't going to look at it as you're picking it the right way. It's going to create envy. I love the concept because I've thought about it myself where, hey, if we all worked for merit, like if we all worked based on our SOL scores, or we all worked based on, how things came out in the long run, but there's no equal way to look at all the teachers because all of them bring their own little piece. And as a principal, what you're looking at is, how do I take what you do really well and work it into the family, as we call it, to make sure that we're doing what we can for the kids? So for me to say your piece is much more important than your piece is not doing that person justice. That's the only thing I can think of. I love the concept, though. It would, in the outside of education sometimes, I love it because it fits because it's a capitalistic concept. You work for you pay, and you got to do your job and make sure you do it well. And I love that idea, but I think with us it would definitely hinder us in a lot of ways sometimes.
And we have really great teachers. I think and we can pitch it to them to ask them. I don't want to speak for them, but I think if we put this before the teachers, they would say, well, if you have that extra money laying around, pool it together and get us more help. I think that's what they would say, like hire somebody else to help us out. I feel like that's what they would want.
I'm just curious if there's other ways to do stuff, like to incentivize. I can't talk anymore. I didn't talk too much. Opportunities to go to a national conference. Like, can we make a statement that says, and I don't know budget-wise, like we'd have to look at the cost, but can we say, we will send 5% of all teachers to a national conference every year, and they get to go to a national conference, and it's all expenses paid. Hotel, food, travel, the conference, whatever, I'm just curious if there's other ways to do it rather than a monetary, you did this right, you did this right. Here's this checkbox, here's this checkbox, and here's this checkbox. Oh, but you didn't get that checkbox, so you don't get $1,000. I don't want, and I'm not saying that you were saying to do that, but the perception of it could be that. just other ways to, I don't know, there's other things, I don't know, thinking out of the box,
Did after-school tutoring, it qualified you to be able to then enter the drawing, so to speak, to be able to go on this trip
To
or
go,
something.
yeah, to
something.
go on a national
So you
trip or
incentivize
whatever,
it to where
yeah.
you still have an option.
And, I know that some other school divisions do similar things like that. Another thing that, has happened before is you rent 2 food trucks, and dinner's free for everybody, that's just an option too. Like they have 2 choices and you can go get a meal for your family, I don't know. It's just other outside of the box kind of things that I'm thinking that comes to mind.
I'm not, and I haven't really thought through fully the merit thing, but I just think good for all of us to think about getting after that priority one, not just excellence for the kids, but also promoting excellence for the educators and all of us to be the best we possibly can be. I'm sure the Board of Supervisors will give us more money if we ask them. I think that was all my questions or thoughts or comments. Except that I hope in the committee we form for Priority 7, we'll have I think it's a good chance to have parents on there and educators and community members and everybody, kind of a wide, diverse body of folks on there.
We can start with the core that started it and then see who else would like to join, if they want to stay on. And so am I correct that we have that change then? We'll add about the committee under Priority 7, and the only other change I have then is on Priority 2. That's the only edits I've made to
And-
the long-range plan.
Yes, but, and figuring out how to get student voice,
Okay.
I think is important. Like, I don't think that will negate whether we vote on it next month, but I'm really passionate about that. Like, the kids need to own, it'll go back to citizenship. They need to own, being a citizen and having input and owning what they do at school. I think it will help in the long run. It'll be hard to, I think there's ways to do it at elementary too, but, and certainly having student voice at elementary is important, but, incorporating a student or 2 in these committees somehow.
Yeah, maybe would it be, you could have a slot for, maybe a non-voting slot probably, but a slot for a student on each one of those committees, or more than one student, but to have their
Right.
voice you can hear. Probably
Yep.
should be non-voting, I think.
Yeah, just input, like student voice. Like, I want students to have an opportunity to own, this is good for us, this is what we need, this is what my peers need to be successful. That's all I got.
Everybody? Anybody? I think one of the ways that we as a team can help to come up with umbrella ideas is, I think modeling is the most important thing that we do. You model what you want to see. And I think if we say that to teachers and bus drivers and everybody that works for us, that, you can make a difference by the way you speak to someone and what you say. And I think that it starts with us and the principals and everybody that works with the kids. So I would like to see the students, as you said, Ms. Collier, have, if you go to the senior high and you say to them, the things that go on that you don't like to see, let's get some information from you about how we stop that and what we do with that. And I think listening sometimes is the beginning of solving an issue.
Oh, I agree. I mean, when we do our walkthroughs, that's the first thing I ask the kids.
I
What
do
can
too.
I do for you? Like, this is why I'm here. What can I do for you? What do you need for you to learn the best? And I should have said diverse set of students. Everybody represented.
Are we ready to adjourn? If so, could I have a motion to adjourn?
Go for it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I want to
Oh.
ask one more question.
Oh,
I'll
what-
rescind my.
Wait a
motion
minute.
to adjourn.
I'm sorry. I just have a question, and we can just mull it over. This is very helpful. These types of meetings, in my opinion, are very helpful for us to have conversations and mull over policies and issues that come from the community. And I'm just curious if we want to do one twice a year, if we want to make it a standard practice. Not every month, we don't need to have 2 meetings a month. Anna, we want you to stay. We won't do 2 meetings a month. But I don't know, do we want to have a work session once a semester, once a quarter? I don't know. It's just something to think about and maybe put on the calendar. I know we just voted on our calendar last month, but I don't know. Y'all think about it, and we can talk about it and decide later. But it's just, I think this is helpful. That's my opinion. I hope y'all think it's helpful too.